It began quietly, almost innocently. In the small Yorkshire town of Pontefract, the Pritchard family had just returned from holiday to their cozy home at 30 East Drive. The kitchen was still, the air strangely heavy, as if the house had been holding its breath. Then, it started. Sugar scattered across the floor. A teacup slid slowly to the edge of the counter, and dropped. No footsteps. No explanation. Just the creeping dread of something unseen watching from the hallway. Jean Pritchard, the mother, dismissed it at first, an odd draft, a trick of the light. But deep down, she felt it. A presence. Cold. Watching. Waiting. And in that silence, a whisper. Faint. Just behind the wall. The house was waking up. And something inside it was no longer content to be quiet. It wasn't just the odd noises anymore. It was the air itself. One evening, Diane Pritchard, just a teenager, walked into the living room and froze. The temperature had plummeted, so sharp, so sudden, her breath hung in the air. Her mother reached out, alarmed by the look on her face, only to recoil as the cold sank into her bones. But the rest of the house was warm. Just this one spot, chilling and dense, as if something was standing there, unseen, breathing beside them. Diane whispered, "It's like someone's in the room." The dog growled low from the hallway, ears pinned back, refusing to enter. Then came the smell, thick, like stagnant water and decay. A scent that had no source, but refused to leave. The house wasn't just haunted. It was alive. And now it was hungry for attention. It escalated. One night, as Diane climbed the stairs, the air grew impossibly still. Then, without warning, she was shoved violently from behind. Her body hit the floor with a sickening thud. No one was there. No footsteps. Just that same cold chill slithering down the hallway. The mirror shattered beside her. Her family rushed to help, but she was shaking, not just from pain, but from terror. "He pushed me," she said, her eyes wide. That night marked the first time the entity revealed its strength. Scratches began appearing on walls, deep gouges in the plaster. Furniture slid across rooms without a sound. And from the staircase, they began to see it. A figure. Cloaked. Faceless. Drenched in black. Standing just long enough to be seen, then gone. The Black Monk had arrived. And he was no longer hiding. They called him Fred at first, an attempt to make the fear bearable. But it didn't take long before Fred shed his playful mask. In the dead of night, as the family huddled in the living room, they saw him, clearly. A tall figure draped in black, hooded like an executioner, standing motionless by the doorway. He did not move. He did not speak. But his presence filled the room like thick smoke, impossible to ignore. Jean's breath caught in her throat as the television flickered to static. The lights dimmed. The temperature plummeted. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, the figure vanished, like mist dissolving into air. But something lingered. A heavy sense of judgment. A warning. The house wasn't just haunted. It was occupied. And the Black Monk had made it known, they were not welcome. Then the walls began to bleed. It started with a damp patch in the hallway, harmless, at first glance. But as the days passed, the stain deepened, darkened, until it oozed a thick, red substance that slid down the plaster like blood. Jean tried scrubbing it clean, only to find it spreading faster than she could wipe. The ceiling dripped. The air grew rancid. And one by one, family photographs, once smiling and whole, warped under the weight of the fluid. Faces smudged. Eyes faded. As if the house itself was erasing their identities. Engineers inspected the pipes. Plumbers searched for leaks. Nothing. No source. No explanation. Just the silent warning of a spirit enraged. The house was no longer just haunted, it was bleeding. And every drop whispered the same chilling message, "You don't belong here." The haunting turned violent, personal. Diane became the target. One night, the family awoke to her screams. They burst into her room and froze in terror. Diane hovered several inches above the bed, her back arched, arms rigid, face twisted in anguish. The sheets coiled around her like living things, tightening with every breath she took. Her eyes were wide, but she wasn't seeing them. She was somewhere else, trapped. A cold wind tore through the room, rattling the windows though they were shut. Then, just as quickly, she dropped. The bed frame splintered beneath her. She gasped as if returning from underwater. He was inside me," she whispered, barely audible. The Black Monk was no longer content to watch from the shadows. Now, he wanted control. And Diane was his doorway. Desperate, the Pritchards turned to the church. A local priest agreed to bless the house, arriving with crucifix and holy water in hand. The moment he stepped inside, the air changed, thicker, charged, like a storm was trapped in the walls. As he began to pray, the house rebelled. Books flew from shelves. A heavy lamp crashed against the wall, missing his head by inches. The crucifix above the fireplace flipped upside down, slowly and deliberately. The priest continued, his voice shaking, reciting scripture over the screams of creaking wood and slamming doors. But then, silence. Everything stopped. For a moment, it felt like victory. Until the priest looked down, his Bible, now charred at the edges, smoldering. The blessing had failed. The house had rejected the church. And the Black Monk had only grown stronger. One rainy afternoon, Jean Pritchard climbed the stairs to fetch laundry. But halfway up, she froze. Something dark lay across the landing, a long, heavy black cloak. She called out, thinking one of the children had left it. No answer. Carefully, she approached and reached down to pick it up, but her hand passed straight through it. The cloak remained for a second more, then vanished like smoke. A chill ran through her bones. Scratches, deep and fresh, lined the wall beside it, as though someone, or something, had dragged their nails up from below. That night, Diane dreamed of a hooded figure standing at the top of the stairs, arms outstretched, whispering her name. The monk wasn't hiding anymore. He was announcing himself. Claiming each step, one floor at a time. It started as a soft rattle. Then, a picture frame lifted slowly from the wall, no hands, no vibration, just rising on its own like drawn by unseen strings. The family watched in stunned silence as the photograph, an old image of them all smiling, floated into the center of the hallway. Then, without warning, it dropped and shattered. The glass splintered across the floor. But the damage wasn't random. Only one face was cracked. Diane's. A jagged line split her image clean through the eyes. Jean picked it up, shaken, and whispered, "He's picking her out." Every photo of Diane in the house began to change, warping, curling, falling. The message was terrifyingly clear. The monk wasn't just haunting them. He had chosen his victim. Diane began hearing whispers, first in her dreams, then while awake. They came from the walls, soft and slithering, like secrets passed through old stone. One night, she sat bolt upright in bed, heart pounding. There it was again, not just whispers, but screams. Muffled cries, pounding behind the plaster like someone was trapped inside. Jean and Joe rushed in, but they heard it too, screams echoing from within the house itself. They pressed their ears to the walls, frozen. It was as if the house remembered pain, and was replaying it. The next morning, chunks of wallpaper had peeled away on their own, revealing claw marks in the wood beneath. Diane refused to sleep alone after that. The monk wasn't just haunting the home. He was embedding his torment into every wall, every sound, every breath the house took. It was supposed to be a quiet dinner. The family gathered around the table, hoping for normalcy in a house that had forgotten the word. Diane got up to fetch a napkin, and never made it back. In an instant, she was yanked backward by her collar, lifted into the air by an unseen force. Her feet kicked wildly, scraping against the wallpaper. Jean screamed as she reached for her daughter, but Diane remained suspended, dangling like a puppet. Her lips moved, but no sound escaped. Then, as suddenly as it started, she was thrown to the ground. A red welt stretched across her neck. Diane sobbed, trembling, "He was there, right behind me, breathing." The family was paralyzed by fear. This wasn't a haunting anymore. It was an attack. The Black Monk was escalating. And no one knew when, or where, he would strike next. As the days wore on, the neighbors began to notice. A postman swore he saw a figure watching from the upstairs window, tall, motionless, draped in black. But the family wasn't home. Another passerby claimed the same, a hooded shadow, always staring, never moving, like a statue in the dark. Jean heard the rumors and checked the window herself, it was locked. Yet that night, she awoke to the sound of curtains rustling. Rising from bed, she crept into the hallway. The window was open. Cold wind swept in, though every other pane in the house was sealed shut. And there, on the glass, were long, greasy smudges, like handprints. But from the outside, the monk was no longer bound by the walls. He was extending his reach, marking his territory, letting everyone know, this house, and everyone near it, belonged to him. The house had become a tomb, a place where the air itself seemed to carry death. Diane wasn't the only one to feel it now. Jean woke one morning to a foul, rotting stench that filled the entire house, overpowering even the fresh air from open windows. She followed the smell through the hallway, but it led her nowhere, only deeper into the house. The floorboards creaked beneath her as she stepped toward the bedroom, and there, at the foot of the door, was the thick, blackened trail of what appeared to be blood. But it didn't stop there. The walls too had begun to secrete a foul, viscous liquid that smeared across the wallpaper like some sickening reminder of the Black Monk's presence. It was a stench she couldn't explain, but she could feel it deep in her gut, death was closing in. Desperation turned to defiance. Jean and Joe had reached their breaking point. They sought out mediums, religious leaders, anyone who could rid them of the Black Monk once and for all. Armed with candles and prayer, they stood as a family in the center of their home, preparing to face the thing that had terrorized them for so long. The air was electric, charged with fear and anticipation. And then, in the darkest corner of the room, it appeared. The Black Monk. His hooded figure towered over them, the coldness of his presence almost suffocating. But this time, they weren't running. "Leave," Jean demanded, her voice shaking but firm. A gust of wind howled through the room, extinguishing the candles one by one. The monk let out a low, guttural laugh before fading into the shadows. For now, the house was quiet. But the family knew it wasn't over. The Black Monk had not left. He had only retreated. Waiting. The Black Monk had been driven back, but not defeated. As the Pritchard family tried to rebuild their lives, a lingering unease remained, creeping into their every moment. Diane, now older, would occasionally find herself glancing over her shoulder, feeling that cold presence, always watching, always waiting. The house, once again, was silent, but the silence was heavy with the knowledge that the monk had never truly left. He had simply retreated into the shadows. The final chapter had not been written. And so, the house remained a haunting reminder of the darkness that could never fully be vanquished, only contained, for now. The Black Monk of Pontefract would always be there, lurking in the corner of their minds, and in the corner of their home. The Black Monk had been driven back, but not defeated. As the Pritchard family tried to rebuild their lives, a lingering unease remained, creeping into their every moment. Diane, now older, would occasionally find herself glancing over her shoulder, feeling that cold presence, always watching, always waiting. The house, once again, was silent, but the silence was heavy with the knowledge that the monk had never truly left. He had simply retreated into the shadows. The final chapter had not been written. And so, the house remained a haunting reminder of the darkness that could never fully be vanquished, only contained, for now. The Black Monk of Pontefract would always be there, lurking in the corner of their minds, and in the corner of their home. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this terrifying true story, be sure to subscribe to Only True Horror for more spine-chilling tales from the dark corners of the world. The Black Monk of Pontefract story is just one of many real hauntings. Check out the full story details in the description below, including the source. Stay safe, and remember, the darkness is always closer than you think.